You're listening to The Rant.
Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
You're listening.
So the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway.
You fucking crazy, man. You sound insane. Do you realize that?
To The Rant.
I speak jive.
Oh, good.
I've been saying it. I've been saying it for 10 damn years. Ain't I been saying it, Miguel? Huh? I've been saying it.
You're listening to The Rant with David King.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Rant. I'm your host, David King. It's good to be back on this Tuesday, November 1st. Ooh, yeah. If you haven't caught the last episode where I was talking about the terminal list, please go check it out. I think you'll be happy to know it was good. Lots to get to today. Main topic. Should we forgive those who have trespassed against us in the name of COVID? That is the main talking point today. We'll get to that in a minute. But in 1 second, because it's Tuesday, the 1st of November, and do we know what that means? Some of you may not. But for those of you who are massive college football fans like myself, then you would know that today they have released the college football playoff rankings. And as always, there's controversy. I haven't listened to any pundit yet. I was at dinner with the wife. I wasn't even going to talk about it today, but I felt so compelled to when I saw it. I was looking up at the television and they were announcing it. And of course, they made a big old deal about it. There was no subtitles, so I don't know what these guys were saying. And I don't know what they have said, and I don't know what anybody else has said. So this is a fresh take, unadulterated. This is how I feel about it. I haven't listened to anybody else, so I could be way off, but this is my opinion. Once again, the CFP shows that it is a colossal, giant, head-scratching, what the hell mess of a system. And I know what you're going to say. Dave, it's early. It doesn't matter. And you're right. It is early. And it probably doesn't. But I'm going to talk about it anyway. Because this goes beyond just the college football playoff rankings. This goes beyond. This is like from the beginning of the season till now. We have seen certain teams get snuffed in the rankings, and it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I can't wrap my head around it. At the beginning of the year, my Wolverines, who went to the playoffs, albeit lost, but went to the playoffs, beat out Ohio State. And not only beat Ohio State, but destroyed them. For whatever reason, Ohio State started out the season ranked above Michigan, and they have stayed there all year. Rightfully so, they are 8-0, but so is Michigan. You know, I was frustrated at that because I thought to myself, here we go again. Michigan, Ohio State is always going to get the nod over Michigan. Why? Because Ohio State, in many respects, is the Alabama of the Big Ten. They've been more productive over the last decade. They've been a better team. I'm not going to sit here and say they haven't been. I'm not going to take that away from them. But at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, well, they won. Michigan won last year. Michigan went to the playoffs. Ohio State didn't do any of that. You would think that Michigan would start above Ohio in the rankings, but they didn't. That was the first thing. They even kind of snuffed Georgia, if I remember correctly. I'd have to go back and look, but I know there was the thing with Alabama and Georgia kind of fighting for the number 1 spot, which is even more of like a head scratcher. Because if I remember correctly, at the beginning of the year, Alabama was put at number 1 and Georgia was put at number 2, I want to say. And you're just kind of like, what? Who does this? Who sits at a table and does that? But it's the continual favorites that seem to be played with these teams. And so here we are now with the CFP, and they released the top 25. Nobody cares about anyone above, in many respects, nobody really cares who's above top 5. For that matter, top 10. Let's just put it that way. Anybody who's ranked in the CFP over ranking of 10th place, you're irrelevant. All right. So 10 through 25 is irrelevant. We're not going to cover any of that. And really, in my opinion, honestly, anything over, and it really just depends on the season. Like this year, for instance, there are so many undefeated teams, and Alabama's a 1-loss team. Oregon's a 1-loss team. So you think to yourself, there's a shot for these teams to move back up if somebody loses. And then, of course, who they lose to. So in this instance, you could argue that at least the top 8 matter this year. I don't know if Southern California matters. I just don't. If LSU was a 1-loss team, I could see them being 9, and then it would matter. But LSU is 10. They're 6-2. I don't see Alabama losing to anybody else in the regular season. Oregon could certainly lose to somebody, but it's not really the point. Oregon's already kind of out of it. They're 8th. Southern California is 9. Southern California is not going to get put above Alabama, so they're 7-1. So even if Southern California were to probably go, let's say 11-1, and Alabama stays at 11-1, they're not going to jump Alabama, or even if Alabama were to lose again, I just don't see Southern California or Oregon jumping them. However, and this is where I don't agree, at number 7 is TCU, who's 8-0, undefeated. Very impressive season from TCU, unexpected. But they're doing well. They're winning. They outperformed expectations. And they are below Alabama. Alabama is 7-1 with a loss. Who did Alabama lose to? Let me pull that up right now. This is the beauty, folks, of a podcast, is we're not official. I don't have a producer. Alabama football. I can't remember who it was. Come on now. They lost to Tennessee. Duh. Come on, Dave. Get your crap together. You remember that game? Oh my gosh. I almost should have just shut up now and move on to the next talking point and just stop talking about college. Of course it was Tennessee. Duh. I remember going nuts about that game. So Tennessee beats Alabama. So but anyway, Alabama's sitting at number 6. Over TCU. I disagree with this. I think Alabama should be at 7. TCU should be at 6. Every 8-0 team right now needs to be 1 through whatever. You can put them on their strength of schedule. And again, that leads to argument. But nonetheless, I would say TCU deserves to be over Alabama at 6. Again, TCU gets snuffed. This is unfortunate. This is just a disgrace. This is Alabama. Alabama's the only team in the NCAA. Alabama, the only team in the NCAA that can lose and still maintain some potential chance of a playoff spot. And it's just stupid. We're over it. Everyone's tired of it. The only people who like it are the Alabama fans. This isn't better for college football. I don't care what anybody says. Well, they want the best teams to play, and obviously it's got to be entertaining. It's like any one of these teams, any one of these top 9 or 10 teams would be an entertaining game to watch in the playoffs. So Alabama should not be at 6. They should be at 7. And maybe that will correct itself, but that's the problem. It probably will not correct itself. Some of these ones in the top 5 will, because these teams will all be playing each other. And that's why people say, well, David, the rankings don't matter. These teams are all going to play each other, and it's going to kind of work itself out. Maybe. I mean, if Alabama could lose to Tennessee and drop to 6 and still have a chance for the playoffs, well, I don't know about that. I would not say that corrects itself. So let's look at this. My Wolverines got snuffed the most. They are put at number 5, just outside of the playoffs. Michigan's had a breakout year, 8-0, brand new quarterback, outperforming expectations defensively. Offensive is looking good. They got a few things they got to fix, but all in all, they have been punishing their opponents. The only ones that they've really struggled against was Maryland, but Maryland, surprisingly, is actually a pretty decent team. I would not sleep on Maryland. I think they're going to be a really, really good ball club soon. So I would probably keep my eye on them. They certainly have been giving everyone a run for their money. They gave Michigan State a huge run. Michigan State lost to Maryland. So here we are, 5. Ugh. So not only, and here's the thing, we went to the playoffs last year. We went to the playoffs last year. We had only one loss last year. It was to Michigan State. We are 8-0 this year. And so why is it that why are we not in the top 4? And this is what's going to piss me. This is what pisses me off even more. So, okay, Clemson's 8-0. It's hard to argue against Clemson getting a good spot because Clemson's been to the playoffs. They've won championships. They've been a consistently good team. However, I believe Clemson is very suspect. I do not think that they're as good. I do not think they're a championship Clemson team like we have seen in the past. I think they have a lot to work on. They have some offensive issues. The problem is they're not playing anybody worthwhile. If we pull up Clemson's schedule, I just don't think anyone on their schedule is left that is going to beat them. I just don't see it. Well, they have Notre Dame. So, and they got South Carolina. South Carolina, I just don't see them doing it. I mean, listen, this is what I don't understand. How is it? And you tell me, if you comment in the Facebook post, Instagram, Twitter, hit me up on Twitter, I'll tell you what my Twitter handle is. Hold on one second. Come on now. Hit me up at Twitter. The Real DM. That's Delta Mike King. So that's The Real DM King. Hit me up on Twitter. Tweet at me and let me know what you think about all this. Because Clemson is in, basically when you get put in the top 4, right? When you're put in because this is a 4-player team playoff. When you're put in the 1, 2, 3, 4 spot, it's your spot to lose. Right? It's almost like, because everyone says, well, this can change, blah, blah, blah. Yes and no, it can. It can, but Clemson's not going to move out of the top 4 unless Clemson does something to screw that up. In other words, Clemson has to lose to get out of the top 4. And so does Clemson belong in the top 4? I would say no. And hey, listen, I like Dabo. Coach Dabo, he's the best. I do pull for Clemson. When I'm not pulling for my Wolverines, I'm actually a big Clemson fan because I really love Coach Dabo. So I think he's a great guy. But they barely beat a 22 ranked Syracuse. They're 27-21. Okay, they barely beat an unranked Florida State 34-28. They barely beat a NC State 30-20. NC State ranked 21. Wake Forest was a close game. Wake Forest ranked 20th. And so my thing here is I do not believe that Clemson deserves an automatic spot in the top 4. This to me is a slap in the face to Michigan. This is a slap in the face to TCU, where teams have outperformed expectations in many regards. They're putting on the numbers. I mean, because some of this is based off of, It's based off a lot of things, right? So it's based off of your performance overall. How have you performed against teams? Have you exceeded expectations? Have you met expectations? Have you played below expectations? I think Clemson's been below expectations for most of the year. You have strength of schedule. Nobody can argue that the ACC is one of the weakest conferences right now in college football. You could make the argument that the Big Ten is a little bit weak this year, weaker than usual. Iowa looks bad. Wisconsin looks bad. Michigan State's bad. Penn State's suspect. Northwestern's nothing. So yes, the Big Ten is having a very off season, but it's still not nearly as bad as the ACC. I would put any team up against the teams in the ACC, and I would say they would win 10-1. But nonetheless, Michigan has performed as expected or better against their teams, and yet Michigan is sitting at 5, and Clemson is sitting at 4. Clemson jumped Michigan in the rankings. So how that happened, I just don't understand this. And then here's the biggest shocker of them all is they bumped Georgia down to number 3. So you have Clemson, who has no business being in the top 4. They're not going to beat Georgia. I don't think Clemson can beat Ohio State, and I really doubt they could beat a Tennessee. I don't think Clemson could beat Alabama. And I think Clemson could probably, I don't know how they would perform against Michigan. That would be a fun game to watch. But I think even then, I think Clemson would have a hard time. And the only reason why I say that is because of just their overall performance all year long. They have struggled against lesser teams, Wake Forest, NC State. Florida State is not a lesser team. Florida State is generally a good team, and I think Florida State's on the up and up in terms of talent. But they're not even ranked. They're 34-28. I mean, that's not a number 5 ranked Clemson. Overall, that's AP poll ranked number 5, should trounce an unranked Florida State team, but they didn't. It was a very close game. And same thing with Syracuse, 22 ranked Syracuse. They only won by 6 points. And yet somehow they managed to put themselves in the top 4. So once again, as always, all year, we're all sitting here. What are we going to do? We're going to fight about who belongs in the top 4. Clemson does not belong in the top 4. And then on top of that, to make things even weirder, as if the world is not upside down enough, Georgia gets put down to number 3. The national champions, the former national champions who are undefeated 8-0, who have, for the most part, been dominant all year. There has been a few close games where you went, oh, what do we have here? Where Mizzou kind of exposed Georgia, and you have Florida, who kind of came back towards the end, but they couldn't pull it off. But nonetheless, they're 8-0. They should be number 1, but they're number 3. Again, this doesn't really matter. Georgia fans could be upset because maybe it's kind of a slap in the face that they're not at number 1. But the reality is Georgia's secured. Again, they're number 3. They're in the top 4. It is their spot to lose. In other words, they're not going anywhere unless they lose. And that could be a really big head scratcher because Georgia plays Tennessee this weekend. So this whole situation is going to change. We don't know how or what, but it will change. And it'll be interesting to see where the loser drops to. And then at number 2, which is even bigger head scratcher for me, Ohio State gets put at number 2. Now, Ohio State has looked good all year, except for their season opener. I think they looked a little sluggish the first couple of games, but they have steadily gotten better through the season. Ohio State, to me, is definitely a top 5 team. Again, being that Michigan was the Big Ten champions last year, went to the playoffs, are undefeated this year, are meeting expectations or exceeding them, Michigan should not be below Ohio State. Ohio State and Michigan, I think they can be very close, but they should not be. I think Michigan should be above Ohio State. Now, with that being said, this will correct itself because Michigan and Ohio State will play each other for the final game of the season. So assuming both teams go undefeated to that game, someone's going to lose, someone's going to drop out of the top 5. So this situation will correct itself. And then Georgia plays Tennessee. Now Tennessee is number 1. Hey, go Volunteers. Good job, guys. You guys have been a laughingstock of the South for quite some time. Now you're in number 1. You're 8-0. You beat Alabama. I think people are saying that the Tennessee-Georgia game could be a huge upset for Georgia because Georgia, while is still a very great team, they kind of are, they're not the same team as they were last year. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I am very excited about this game. I'm really hoping it's a good one. I'm kind of pulling for Tennessee just because, and you know, my wife's a Georgia fan and I told her, and she kind of actually agrees because while she is a Georgia fan, she's not as committed like I am to college football. She loves college football, but she's not like the obnoxious Georgia fan like most Georgia fans are. You know who you are. Tennessee, it would be nice to see a different SEC team go to the playoffs. I would really love to see Tennessee. I'd love to see a Big Ten team. Heck, if Clemson can win out, it'd be great to have Clemson. There's an ACC team. And then TCU, man, that'd be great. Maybe Oregon or something. But anyway, it would just be nice to have a mix-up. It's been the same for a while now, and it's just kind of tiresome. So 2 of these teams will correct themselves. I'm not generally too upset about, I'm upset that Michigan got snuffed at 5, but in a way, it's kind of nice because I know Jim Harbaugh will probably use that as a rallying cry call rather for his team and say, look where they put us. They put us at 5th. They put us below that team that's the name we dare not say, that team below us. They put us at a lesser rank than them. How dare they? Who do they think they are? We need to go out there and show them what Michigan football is all about. The biggest thing I don't like about this is Clemson. I'm sorry. I hate that Clemson is in the top 4. I would much rather see Clemson at 5 or 6, and I'd like to see TCU somewhere in there as well. So my top 7 would be Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State, Michigan in there. You could pick or choose 3 or 4. It really doesn't matter. But I think you go Georgia, Tennessee, Michigan, Ohio State. I would put TCU at 5 because TCU has been more impressive in my opinion than Clemson. I put Clemson at 6, Alabama at 7. Just outside simply because they are 7-1. All these other teams are 8-0. They're having a great year. Alabama lost. Sorry, boys. You dropped to 7. And yeah. And then so here's the question, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens at the end of next weekend. So if Tennessee loses, how far down does Tennessee drop? Now, because Georgia's number 1 in the country with the AP poll, but they're 3 on the CFP poll. So the CFP rankings, which are what all that matter really is the CFP rankings. Georgia, if Georgia beats Tennessee, Georgia obviously will go up to number 1. Where Tennessee goes will be very interesting. I would have to think that Clemson, Michigan move up. Tennessee drops down somewhere. But would they snuff? I would think they'd put Tennessee at 5. Michigan goes up to 4. And the other 2 teams move up. So I'd think it'd be like Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, Michigan at that point. Tennessee at probably I would say 5, just above Alabama. The worst thing Alabama wants Georgia to lose, I think. I think they do, because if Alabama wants a shot at the playoffs, they want Georgia to lose, because if Alabama loses to Tennessee and then Georgia loses to Tennessee, then it's really just it's any man's game. Then you're kind of just hoping what's going to happen. But then, of course, then you have Michigan, Ohio State at the end of the season. If one of those teams lose, it's a Big Ten team, so they'll fall out so far out of the damn mix that they'll never make it into a playoff, and then one of those teams will stay in. So it will correct itself. It'll be interesting to see where things go. But the thing is Clemson's sitting pretty right now, man. Like, all they got to do is just win. And like I said, I don't see them losing. I don't think they lose to Louisville. I think they handle Notre Dame, although maybe not. Notre Dame might be a trap game. Notre Dame is one of those teams They're 5-3, but that doesn't mean anything, because normally I would say Notre Dame and Fighting Irish are going to get their butts kicked. But like I said, Clemson is suspect, and they have struggled against all these other teams, which they should have handled very, very, LA Tech 48-20. They let 20 points get put on them by LA Tech. Come on. They are having a hard time. I think Notre Dame Clemson could be a really good game. If Clemson loses, they're definitely going to fall out. Clemson loses, they'll drop out. Michigan moves up. Clemson will go behind. Clemson will drop below Alabama. TCU will move up. So it's very likely that Clemson would actually go below Tennessee and go to 8. Or 7. I guess that would be 7th. TCU would go 6. Alabama goes 5. Michigan goes 4. I could see that happening. So it's hard to tell. It's early. There's really no sense in getting too upset about it all, but it is just kind of interesting to see how they've ranked these teams now. And I guess if they did not have, I guess they're kind of saying, look, we think Tennessee's going to be the team that goes all the way this year, so we're putting them at number 1. We think Ohio State's a team that could go all the way, so we're putting them at number 2, but we think Tennessee might have a better chance. Georgia's always a shoe-in, so we'll put them at 3. And Clemson and Michigan, they probably think Clemson and Michigan are really neck and neck in terms of what they could do. So they just put them at 4 and 5. And they know that Michigan plays Ohio State, so that situation will fix itself. Georgia plays Tennessee, that situation will fix itself, yada, yada, yada. So it is what it is. But like I said, Clemson is the only thing. I'm just like, I don't know about that one. I would have put Clemson at 5. Michigan it should be Michigan and Ohio State's to lose. But anyway, I don't like the idea. But again, that's the thing. Like if Ohio State loses, they'll drop out. Michigan I would think in theory, move into the top 4. So yeah, it should be fine. But that's the world of college football. And we're getting down to the nitty gritty of it now. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting month of November. Let's see here. So Michigan plays, we have to play. And we got no cupcake. We got Nebraska and we got Illinois. Now, Illinois, I am going to be nervous about Illinois. Illinois is a trap game. Nebraska could be a trap game. Nebraska's not ranked, but Nebraska is one of those teams that if you don't show up to play, they will get you. Illinois looks good this year. They are kind of like I would say, they're ranked 14. Illinois, the Fighting Illini, they're generally not somebody that you would worry about, but this year they look pretty good. So Michigan's definitely going to have to show up. And then of course, after Nebraska and Illinois, there's the big game, Michigan versus that team below us, Ohio State. And that's when that situation in the top CFP will fix itself. So at the end of the month, unless Ohio State chokes, which I don't see happening. I think Ohio State goes out and wins out until they come to Michigan, or until we go to them in Ohio. Man, I love college football. I look forward to it every year. It snuck up on me this year. I don't know about you guys, but this year went by fast. Christmas is just right around the corner. Halloween was yesterday. And here we are. So on to the next topic as we segue into the next discussion. I will forgive the CFP for what they have done, because I am, after all, a Christian man, and I am to forgive. We should have forgiving hearts because Jesus tells us to. And I'm not saying that in a condescending way. I'm saying that to be truthful. So I forgive you. I forgive you, CFP, for your atrocious ranking, as always. But that's okay. So that segues very clearly into the next talking point, which is an article that's kind of made its way through social media, popped up a couple days ago. It's an article from The Atlantic, because I don't know who reads this, but apparently everybody does, because it kind of made waves through social media, and you might have seen it. It's a little article by a lady by the name of Emily Oster. It's from The Atlantic, and it's titled, "Let's Declare Pandemic Amnesty." Interesting. Let's declare pandemic amnesty. We need to forgive one another for what we did and said when we were in the dark about COVID. Now, that's okay. There's a person here. She wants to say she is extending an olive branch to a group of individuals. I am going to assume, because this is The Atlantic, and that she wants amnesty for things that were said and done while in the dark about COVID. I am going to assume that this woman is on the Fauci, you got to wear a mask side of things. And I was right when I read the article. The article goes on to say, in April of 2020, with nothing else to do, my family took on an enormous number of hikes. Okay, cool. It's good for you. Love that. We all wore cloth masks that I had made myself. We had a family hand signal, which the person in the front would use if someone was approaching on the trail and we needed to put our masks on. Ooh. Strike one. Once when another child got too close to my then 4-year-old son on a bridge, he yelled at her, "Social distancing!" Oh my gosh. I remember these days. I'm going to tell you something. 2020 was a weird year. I am convinced that the earth was sucked into a black hole on midnight of New Year's Eve. And everything is now upside down, backwards, and people are acting like fools. And I remember the folks that yelled, "Social distancing, keep your distance." I remember the folks that wagged their finger at you if you didn't have your mask on right, or if you were too close to them, or if you touched something and then went to touch something else without cleaning your hands. And it was insanity. Anyway, the article goes on to say these precautions were totally misguided. Really? In April 2020, no one got the coronavirus from passing someone else hiking. No kidding. Outdoor transmission was vanishingly rare. Our cloth masks made out of old bandanas wouldn't have done anything anyway. But the thing is, we didn't know. Alrighty. So here's the thing. When I read the title of this article, we would like to declare COVID amnesty. Forgiveness. Forgive us because we were in the dark about COVID. And so I'm like, I'm curious. I am coming to you with open hands, and I would love to hear what you have to say, understand where you're coming from, and I would love to agree with you. Let's read. And then when I got to this point, my brain literally exploded. There was matter all over the wall. It was a mess. My wife had to clean it up, put me back together, stitch me up, sit me in this chair, and teach me how to read again, because my brain had imploded into a million pieces when I read this. It was bad. The thing is, we didn't know. In April of 2020, we didn't know. The reality is, you did know. You could have known. If you were somebody who sat at their couch and they watched the same program, they watched MSNBC, CNN, and even Fox News, and they listened to Dr. Fauci, and they didn't question, and they didn't go and do the research, or at that time of April, February, March, April, and May, when this show had just launched. Unfortunately, those shows are not available right now. They're cataloged. I will re-release them. But you would have heard me saying, just some simpleton, just a guy, former U.S. Marine, woodworker, media mogul. I make videos and take photos for a living, stuff like that. Not a doctor, not a scientist, Just an average guy, high school diploma, a little bit of college, but never finished. Went to the Marine Corps. Not somebody that you would expect to be formally educated or have any real knowing of science, health, and anything else. But believe it or not, I read a lot. I study a lot. And I read a lot and I studied a lot and I looked into this when it first appeared because I was not convinced that the coronavirus was as dangerous and as deadly as they were trying to tell us it was. And so I was listening to other doctors. I was listening to people say, no, this is not this. It is not what Dr. Fauci or these other folks are saying. This is a such and such virus. It doesn't work that way. It's much like the flu. This is how it's transmitted. This is how you can get it. This is how you would deal with it. Masks aren't going to work. Masks don't work. Masks don't work. Masks don't do anything. And especially you idiots out there who are making your own masks that are I saw a woman at one point, folks, with a knitted mask. A knitted mask. You could see her face through it. I don't know if she believed that that actually worked or if that was just her way of getting past the mask mandate so she could breathe, because everyone knows that, hell, most of those masks they're kind of stifling. Hers was breathable, so it wasn't doing anything. I would like to think that that was her way of hacking the system, that she wasn't buying into it, but I just doubt it. The reality is we did know. The reality is that you, the people at The Atlantic, the people at MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, and all these other major media outlets, and these celebrities and leftists, you were silencing us. You were telling us, the folks that were saying, hey, hello, we have all this other data. You know, you guys say follow the science, the science, the science. It's right here. Look, it doesn't work. What you're doing doesn't help. We're trying to show you that you don't have to go through all these unnecessary steps, these shutdowns, these lockdowns, the masks and the shields and the 4 layers of gloves and all the nonsense that you're doing is not helping. You don't need to do that. This is what you need to do. Look, and you told us to shut up. You called us names. You told us that we were killing people. You called us monsters and alt-rightist neo-Nazi freaks and all other kinds of awful names. You said this was not a war. This wasn't a pandemic of the vaccinated. It was the pandemic of the unvaccinated. It was the unvaccinated spreading the virus, and it was the unvaccinated killing everybody. The unvaccinated is going to kill your mother and father, and you need to tell the person who's not vaccinated to get the vaccine, and if they don't, you better hold them up against the wall and chastise them. That's what happened. To say that you didn't know, and if that is true, that you didn't know the truth, it's because you were willfully ignorant. Or, well, no, you had to be willfully ignorant. Or you're working for the group that is malevolent, which is the Faucis, the mainstream media, the people who are squashing these doctors. There were doctors being dragged through the dirt for asking questions. Just asking questions. These are doctors. They've gone to school. They practice medicine. They are experts in their field. In many cases, they're expert in these sorts of viruses. And they were dragged through the mud for asking questions. And you say, oh, we didn't know. You did know. Or you were willfully ignorant. It's just that simple. The whole thing of you going, well, we didn't know. Yeah, you could have known if you and your people weren't trying to silence the ones asking questions. The ones that were pushing back going, whoa, wait a minute. None of this makes any sense. And this is why, because statistically with this sort of virus, the way it works, even Dr. Fauci, 3 months before the pandemic was announced, officially announced, in 2019, he was jokingly saying that masks will not protect you from the flu. Masks don't work. Folks, I would watch a woman. I was at a candle festival with my wife. She sells candles on the side. It's not going to be a side business for very long. She's going to take over and be the next Yankee Candle because it's who she is, and they're fantastic candles. Besides the point. I was at a festival with her last year. People were still masked up. Social distancing was over, but some people were still masked up. This woman was masked up. Now, keep in mind, I'm in Georgia, so the mask mandate was over a long time ago. It was not in effect there. Masks were not mandatory. There was no social distancing. It was pretty much back to normal, You could, if you wanted to wear a mask, you could. And there were people who were still wearing masks. And that is your right. I don't care. If you want to wear a mask, go ahead. I don't care. But there's so many of these people who are wearing these masks, folks. And they would pick up a candle. Now, these candles are all on display for everybody to touch and smell. So they would pick up a candle and they would take the lid off and then they would pull their mask down and they'd smell the candle. Put their mask back on, put the cap back on, and they would repeat this process every time they touched the candle. Now, let me ask you something. How many things have you touched with your hands before you came and touched my candles? And not only that, how many people have touched those candles and smelled them before you showed up? And every time you go to smell a candle, you have to touch your face and pull that mask down. So you're literally taking your bacteria-ridden hands and bringing them up to the orifices of your face every time you want to smell the candle. So now the mask is no longer effective. It has become literally the primary cause for why you're going to have a cold the next day, because you finger touched everything in this festival and then went and touched your face. She probably touched her face more times in my candle booth with my wife than she would normally touch her face in probably a week. And that's one of the reasons why masks don't work, because you fidget with it. You have to adjust it, but you don't take into account what you've touched and what is on your hands before you do that. Don't say you didn't know, you knew. The article goes on to say, I have been reflecting on this lack of knowledge thanks to a class I'm co-teaching at Brown University on COVID. Oh boy, here we go. We spent several lectures reliving the first year of the pandemic, discussing the many important choices we had to make under conditions of tremendous uncertainty. I'm going to tell you something, folks. As a Christian man, I was never scared. I know there are people who were scared for me because I was the one during the entire pandemic. If I didn't have to wear a mask, I didn't wear a mask. I was the one going and getting groceries. I was the one going to the store. I had no issue. I'm not saying this to boast or be prideful of it or anything like that. My point is that I told myself, I knew because I had done the research. I had looked into it. And I also knew that I thought I already had gotten it because in January, I got very, very sick with what felt like the flu, but worse. And I'm pretty sure it was COVID because I had flown to Vegas for a conference and came back, and that's when I got it. So I was convinced I already had gotten it, and I also knew there's no chance I'm going to avoid it, so I might as well get it, fight it off, deal with it, and get immunity. And I was right. Now, you could say, well, Dave, that was a gamble. You could have been wrong, and you're right. I could have been wrong, and I could have died from it. But the thing is death is just part of life. And I'm not going to stop living because I'm scared to die. I'm going to go to the grocery store. The moment I'm scared to go to the grocery store because I think I'm going to die, you stop living. And that's not a good thing. So there was tremendous uncertainty, but there didn't have to be uncertainty if you had just did the research. And you didn't have to go very far. You just needed to have an open mind. I know, holy cow. A conservative man is telling somebody to have an open mind. All you had to do was have an open mind and read and listen to these other doctors and see what they're saying and then make a conclusion from it. You would have found that if you're a pretty rational human being, you would realize this may not be what we think it is. Anyway, it goes on here. Some of these choices turned out better than others. To take an example close to my own work, there's an emerging, if not universal, consensus that schools in the U.S. were closed for too long. No kidding. The health risks of in-school spread were relatively low, no kidding, because this virus does not affect children the same way it affects fully grown adults, whereas the cost to students' well-being and educational progress were high. I'm glad we're just now figuring this out in almost 2023. We're almost at the end of 2022, and this person's finally realizing the toll that these kids are paying for what they were put through from 2020 until now. The latest figures on learning loss are alarming. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I was listening to stories of kids who were resuming from school and like the parents were walking in on the kids watching like basketball while the teacher was teaching something on the computer. So in other words, the student's not engaged with the teacher, the student's watching basketball. But in spring and summer of 2020, we had only glimmers of information. That is not true. Again, that's not true. Like on a scale unfathomable to man is untrue. We had a lot of information. There was a whole giant group of people yelling to the sky that these kids can go back to school. These kids are fine. This does not affect the kids. And I think even at some point, Fauci had even said that before he was probably paid to change his opinion. But reasonable people, here we go, reasonable people who cared about children and teachers advocated on both sides of the reopening debate. I would make the argument that I think there were people who were willfully ignorant, who blindly go with whatever the mainstream group tells them, the Faucis of the world. And they were generally scared and terrified for the kids and the teachers, and they wanted to shut the schools down. But I also think that there was more to that in terms of the teachers' unions. This was a political opportunity for the unions to get maybe some leverage and get some deals made. They kept the teachers out. The teachers liked it because they weren't going to work. They were still getting paid to stay at home. This was not 100%. This wasn't 50-50, like kids can go back to school because it's safe. And then there's the other group going, no, they're going to get sick. There was a small minority of people there who are worried about the actual safety of the teachers and kids. And then there's another group there that are just looking for political opportunity and the fact that they could stay home and work and yada, 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 yada. Because it was mostly public. This was mostly a public school issue, not a private school issue. Another example, she goes on to say, when the vaccines came out, we lacked definitive data on the relative efficiencies of the Johnson & Johnson shot versus the mRNA options from Pfizer and Moderna. The mRNA vaccines have won out, but at the time, many people in public health were either neutral or expressed a J&J preference. This misstep wasn't nefarious, it was the result of uncertainty. And while the mRNA vaccines have won out, they are still very ineffective. You are now getting 3, 4, 5 boosters at this point. This shot is a joke. It's not effective. It doesn't work. People I know so many folks that have gotten the shot and gotten boosted that still get COVID. They still get very sick. You could make the argument, well, they may have died if they didn't get the shot. It's like, no, they probably wouldn't have died. These people were generally very healthy, very average in terms of health. They still got it, still got sick. So the reality is it's not ineffective. If you can get this, to me, a vaccination to me means if I get the vaccine, then I don't get sick. That's the point of the vaccination. It is to protect me from getting the virus. It's to protect me from getting the disease. It's not doing that. And in fact, there are quite a lot of people right now who are having some serious side effects, primarily young men, early onset myocarditis. There's people who've been passing out. They have some brain issues. So I'm not going to get into that now because I have not done the full depth research on it to want to comfortably talk about that with you guys. If you guys hear me talking about something, this is what I want you to understand. In 2020, when I was talking about the virus, about how this was not going to be a big deal, this is not as serious as people are saying, we all need to stop freaking out, this is what you need to do, yada, yada, yada. I was doing that because I had done the time and research. I was looking into it. I felt very comfortable with what I have learned to repeat that through this microphone to you. If I have not done the research and I have not confirmed or feel comfortable with it, I'm not going to go into it very in depth. I can simply say, hey guys, I've seen some headlines that are saying that there's some complications with the vaccination in young men. That's all I know. I'm not going to go any further to that because I don't feel comfortable talking about something that I don't know a whole lot about. You can put that to the bank on any one of my podcasts. That's how I'm going to treat it. And then if I'm wrong and somebody wants to come back and say, Dave, hey, I heard you talking about this. You got it wrong. Here's some stuff, some peer review studies. Look at that. And maybe it'll change the way you think. I'd be happy to read it. And it may even change my mind and I'll come back and correct it. I'm not here to just prove that I'm always right. That's not how this works. So I'm not going to touch on the side effects of these vaccinations, but I've been reading some articles where it's not too good. And I think we're going to find out down the road that the vaccinations have done more harm than good. Maybe not on like in terms of this metric scale of like, oh my gosh, everybody got it, died. Like nothing like that, but you're just going to find it's not a very effective vaccination. And for some folks, it really hurt them more than helped. Anyway, moving on. She goes, obviously some people intended to mislead and made wildly irresponsible claims. Remember when the public health community had to spend a lot of time and resources urging Americans not to inject themselves with bleach? Yes, that was bad. Misinformation was and remains a huge problem. But most errors were made by people who were working in earnest for the good of society. Interestingly enough, and I played the soundbite over and over and over again, and I should go find it just so I can play it again. President Trump never said to inject yourself with bleach. He never recommended it, never thought it was a good idea. He said that doctors at the time were experimenting on ways to essentially clean the lungs. And these people who are pretty much on the deathbed, their lungs are failing, they're on respirators at this point. They're not doing very well. So they're trying to find ways to clear out the lungs. And he had said that they were working with some sort of disinfectant. And the interesting thing is as he's saying this, he's kind of asking the question to the doctor, the person sitting there. He's like, they have a sort of disinfectant for the lungs that they kind of wash the lungs. If that's what I'm saying, they're trying that out. That's what you said. And you can see the doctor going, yes, that's true. We are experimenting. We are trying to figure this stuff out. So he never said to eject yourself with bleach. That's ridiculous. Anyway. But again, a lot of what COVID was, folks, was a political opportunity for many folks to get Donald Trump out of office. Love him, hate him, whatever. I don't care where you stand politically. I don't care. But COVID was certainly a political opportunity for a lot of people, and they jumped on it. I think this was a money-making opportunity for companies like Pfizer and Moderna. This was something where they said, I don't think it started out that way, but I think when Trump got on the horn with them to create some sort of vaccination in rapid time, they were like, yeah, we'll do it. But you know what? We're going to need some sort of guarantee that we're going to make XYZ because we're going to dump a lot of money into this, a lot of research. We'll get it made. We'll get it distributed. We're going to need you to kind of work around some loopholes so we can get it out there faster. I mean, Pfizer is looking to make billions of dollars. They made billions. They made more I wish I should pull it up and find it, but Pfizer was set to make record profits off of the COVID vaccination. And I'm sure it's the same for all the boosters. I mean, when the government hands you a blank check and says, make something, you're going to make it and you're going to push it. And you may even get politically involved. You may even get some lobbyists, your lobbyists in the pharmaceutical industry to get involved to help kind of push that vaccination through and say, everybody really should get it. And while we're at it, not just adults, but we should really give it to kids too. So the whole vaccination thing is a mess. I think it started all with good intentions and it went downhill from there. And I think we're going to look back at this and we're going to learn a lot, and hopefully we'll learn our lesson from it and not force people to put something in their body that they don't want to put into it. They should never be forced to take any sort of vaccination, or any kind of medicine or any medical procedure against their will. And they shouldn't be punished for it either. So it's ridiculous, but yes, this was very much political. This was political. This was all about opportunity from all different sides. This isn't a black and white issue. It may have started out that way, but it didn't end that way. Given the amount of uncertainty, it goes on to say, almost every position was taken on every topic, and on every topic, someone was eventually proved right, and someone else was proved wrong. In some instances, the right people were right for the wrong reasons. In other instances, they had a prescient understanding of the available information. The people who got it right, for whatever reason, may want to gloat. I'm not gloating. I'm just simply saying I have been saying this since the beginning, and you people wouldn't listen to me, and I've been chastised and told that I'm a horrible human being for what I said. Those who got it wrong, for whatever reason, may feel defensive and retrench into a position that doesn't accord with the facts, and that is true. We can all admit that we're wrong. All of this gloating and defensiveness continues to gobble up a lot of social energy and to drive the culture wars, especially on the internet. Yep, that's true. These discussions are heated, unpleasant, and ultimately unproductive. I agree. In the face of so much uncertainty, getting something right had a hefty element of luck. No, that's not true. And similarly, getting something wrong wasn't a moral failing. It could have been, because I think there was a lot of malevolent people involved in this for political reasons. So yes, I do think there was a giant moral failing for quite a few people. Not everybody, but I would put Dr. Fauci in there. I think Dr. Fauci should be tried. He needs to be held accountable. And anyway, she goes on, treating pandemic choices as a scorecard on which some people racked up more points than others is preventing us from moving forward. Yeah, I mean, that's true too, because when you think about it, some of this stuff was just like, I'm doing my part. Look at all the things I've done to protect the people around me. Look how much I care. I've got a mask on. I've got a shield on. I put on a helmet. I'm even wearing a condom. I care about everybody. She goes, oh, no, go away. I thought it was going to make me subscribe. It just popped up a subscription thing. We have to put these fights aside and declare a pandemic amnesty. We can leave out the willful purveyors of actual misinformation while forgiving the hard calls that people had no choice but to make with imperfect knowledge. Los Angeles County closed its beaches in summer of 2020. Ex post facto, this makes no more sense than my family masked hiking trips. It took you this long to figure that out? I mean, we'd only been, shouting at the moon from the beginning that Los Angeles County closing the beaches never made any sense. But we need to learn from our mistakes and then let them go. We need to forgive the attacks too, because I thought schools should reopen and argue that kids as a group were not at high risk. I was called a teacher killer, a genocidea. It wasn't pleasant, but feelings were high, and I certainly don't need to dissect and rehash that time for the rest of my days. No, you don't. You certainly do not need to rehash it or live or dwell in it. But here's the thing. Los Angeles County closed the beaches, but that's not the only thing Los Angeles County did. Los Angeles County shut down businesses, and they wouldn't let them reopen. And some of the businesses that fought back and said we should be allowed to make that choice for ourselves, they went to court and were essentially bankrupted in court and shut down. Los Angeles County waged a war against the dissenters, the ones that questioned, the ones that said we should have the choice to do what we want to do with our bodies and our health. That's the thing that the left always tries to tell us. It's our bodies, our choice, except when it comes to COVID. You sit down, you shut up, and you do what you're told. But that doesn't make any sense. This isn't simply people who made little mistakes and we should just forgive and move on. No. Understand that the government that be, I am fine. Let me finish this article and I'll finish my comment on this because it's going to all segue into this. So I don't want to get off track here. But she goes on to say, moving on is crucial now because the pandemic created many problems that we still need to solve. Student test scores have shown historic declines, more so in math than in reading, and more so for students who were disadvantaged at the start. We need to collect data, experiment, and invest. Is high-dosage tutoring more or less effective than extended school years? Why have some states recovered faster than others? Gee, I wonder which states that are. Georgia, Florida, opened after 2 weeks. We should focus on questions like these because answering them is how we will help our children recover. I agree. We really need to look into how we can bounce back from the gigantic, atrocious mistake that the government made, teachers made, the teacher unions made. I think we should start with abolishing the teachers union. But that's just me. Many people have neglected their health care over the past several years. Notably, routine vaccination rates for children, for measles, pertussis, etc., are way down. Rather than debating the role that messaging about COVID vaccines had in this decline, we need to put all our energy into bringing these rates back up. Pediatricians and public health officials will need to work together on community outreach, and politicians will need to consider school mandates. I disagree with this last point. Politicians don't need to get involved with school mandates on anything when it calls to health, because now what you're doing is you're essentially reliving the pandemic all over again. When you get the politicians and you get the government involved saying, we are going to mandate you do something with your health, like they did with the pandemic, where they told you had to stay inside, wear a mask, get a shot, yada, yada, yada. That doesn't really work out too well. And the reason why these vaccination rates are down, and the reason why they're having a hard time getting them back up, is because people have lost trust in the healthcare system. The one thing that we learned from the pandemic, anyone with a rational brain or even half a brain knows this, and in some way has to feel this way, but we've all lost trust in our doctors. We've lost trust in the medical system because we were being fed information that we knew didn't make sense and didn't feel right. And then on top of that, we were being chastised and, dragged through the mud because we dared to question it. And not only that, but when we questioned it, it turns out a lot of times we were right. And then on top of that, our doctors never really apologized or admitted they were wrong. They just kept hammering down their point, even though it was wrong. It makes you kind of lose faith in where they're coming from. I have since swapped and changed doctors. I've actually thought about changing a doctor again. It's a whole nother podcast. Simply because you kind of see where they align with everything and you go, yeah, I don't trust them because, for crying out loud, my doctor wore a mask during a teleconference medical call. Like, she was in her office. It's just her and me on the iPad. I wasn't there. I was on the iPad in my home, and she was wearing a mask, which was great because I could barely hear her or understand her. So fantastic. It's a good thing. Good Lord. It's 2022. I digress. She goes off to finish this. The last paragraph here is, the standard saying is that those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, but dwelling on the mistakes of history can lead to a repetitive doom loop as well. Let's acknowledge that we made complicated choices in the face of deep uncertainty, and then try to work together and build back and move forward. So, sorry, I got distracted by an ad. It was completely absurd. Emily Oster is an economist at Brown University. She's the author of The Family Firm, a data-driven guide to the better decision-making in the early school years, yada, yada, yada. I don't really know who Emily Oster is. I don't care. Here's the thing, and I'm going to lead with this. I'm a Christian. I am a evangelical Christian. In other words, I'm a Bible thumping, pounding. I believe in Jesus, the Bible, and everything to the T. I believe it's the standard I should live my life to. And that being said, you'll probably jump up and say, aha, so you must agree with her. You must forgive because Jesus tells us to forgive. And you're absolutely correct. He does. We should. As much as possible. We should forgive each other just as in Christ God forgave us. This is obviously a well-known verse in the Bible. I agree. I think I could forgive my neighbor for yelling social distancing at me. I think I can forgive. I think we can forgive everybody. I think we can forgive Dr. Fauci. However, we can forgive, but we should not forget. Forgive and forget is not biblical. It's to say that I will act as if the sin had never occurred and live as if I don't remember it. Then if we do that, then we can run into trouble. For example, let's say like a rape victim. You can choose to forgive the rapist, but that does not mean that she or he should act as if that sin had never happened. To spend time alone with the rapist, especially if he is unrepentant, which so many of these folks, especially in the government officials, this lady here who wrote this is probably coming from a very sincere place. So she is repentant of her mistakes. We are forgiving her, and she's also repentant. But if the rapist in this sort of example that I was giving is unrepentant, it is not what Scripture teaches to be in a room alone with him. Don't forget what he did to you. Forgiveness involves not holding a sin against a person any longer, but forgiveness is different from trust. And that is the ultimate word in all of this, is trust. Should we forgive and move on? Yes. Should we forget? No. Can we trust the leaders and the people that made the decisions and were moving us through the last 2 years? Absolutely not. We can't. It is always wise to take precautions, and sometimes the dynamics of a relationship will have to change. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. That's Proverbs 22:3. Jesus told his followers to be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. Matthew 10:16. In the context of keeping company with unrepentant sinners, we must be innocent, willing to forgive, yet at the same time shrewd, being cautious. In other words, I'm using this because people like to hold my faith against me, which is perfectly fine. You should always hold me accountable in my faith because I will hold you accountable in yours. I can forgive these people. They are not repentant of their sins. They are not repentant of the fact that they misled, made the wrong decisions. Some of them are, and good for them. But nonetheless, these folks have to be held accountable. I am not saying that someone needs to even go to jail. I don't think people should be put to death, go to jail, pay a fine. I think government leaders should be fired. I think Dr. Fauci should be disgraced as a doctor. He needs to be called out for what he did. His lies, his manipulation, his going about for political reasons, all of the wrongdoings, in order for us to trust the government ever again in these situations, and in order for us not only just to trust the government, which I never trust the government anyway, but in order to trust them and in order to trust the medical world, which this is the most important thing, we can forgive the medical industry, but we cannot forget. We cannot allow the folks who were willfully malevolent or misleading in this, who refused to hear the other side, which ended up being correct. We cannot allow them to continue forward without some sort of reprimand. They must answer for what they did. Whether it means they do not practice medicine anymore, whether that means they are brought to the light and everyone knows this person here is not to be trusted because they willfully lied, or were not willing to hear the other side, to have an honest debate, to look at the facts, and in many cases may have done this for political reasons. And if that's the case, that is true malevolence, and they should be fired. They should be never allowed to practice medicine again. They should have no say in anything going forward. It's that simple. You ruined lives. This woman, in her article here, paints this whole thing as of, well, we kind of, hey, we were all trying to make decisions. We didn't know. And our hearts were in the right place. That might have been true for you, but that wasn't true for a lot of folks. And the decisions that they made at their level of leadership caused a lot of people's lives to be ruined. There's no telling what the suicide rate ended up being from all of this. People lost their businesses. They've lost their families. They lost money. They could have went into debt from it. This affected people's lives negatively in so many ways. It caused undue stress. There was, instead of us saying, hey, this is a vaccination, instead of saying that this is a pandemic of the unhealthy and the elderly, we made it a pandemic of the unvaccinated and everyone else. Instead of saying, if you're young, healthy, in good shape, you take care of yourself, you're going to get COVID. We're sorry, but you're going to be fine. It's going to suck. You're going to feel like dog crap. Drink your fluids, take your medicine, sit in bed, binge Netflix, and ride it out. But if you're morbidly obese, you have a pre-existing condition, or you're in the very, or you're someone who's very old, you are at risk. Let's make sure we take precautions to protect you. But we didn't do that. Instead, they carpet bombed everyone with information that was wrong. They made decisions that killed thousands of senior citizens in senior living homes. It was almost as if they were doing it on purpose. They did it in Michigan. Michigan had the worst numbers out of all of them. New York was a close second. Instead of telling people that the fact that this virus crucially and unequivocally affects the morbidly obese, nobody said anything about that. Instead, now they are propping up people who are overweight and saying they're beautiful and this is fine. When the fact is, someone who is like Lizzo, not to bring her up, Lizzo is morbidly obese. She is actually someone who is seriously at risk to being affected the most by COVID-19. She's probably also very likely to be affected very horribly by the flu because she is so overweight and her immune system is being taxed. But nobody wants to say that. So the reality is we could have done the right thing here. We knew what the right thing was. They chose not to do it. And they did it for reasons for politics, money, some other sort of gain. Who knows? Honestly, it could have all just been to get rid of the big bad orange man in office in 2020. And it carried on because they just had to continue to lie so nobody got caught and we could just get through it. Have you ever told a lie? This happens a lot when we're kids. Because kids lie because they don't know any better. But they tell a lie and then you kind of realize that the lie, you're about to get caught in the lie, so you have to tell another lie, and then you kind of have to keep it going, and the next thing you know, that lie just continues on and on and on and on, and what was maybe a simple lie just carries out into eternity until either A, you fess up, or B, people just stop asking questions, and it goes away. This was that lie. This was the great lie of 2020. It was the great lie that everyone could die from this. The kids are going to die. The teachers are going to die. The 20-year-old college kid who runs a 5K for fun on the weekends, he's going to die. He's at risk. The great lie is that if you don't get vaccinated, you'll die. And that if you're not vaccinated, you're going to spread it to everybody else, then they'll die. That is the great lie. And they told that great lie for political gain to get rid of Donald Trump. And I know it's not just for that reason. There's other reasons, but they told it. And then they had to keep pushing through it because God forbid if everyone found out how big of phonies they were, malevolent, lying phonies that they all are. They don't care about you. And yes, we can forgive, but we should not forget, and they should be held accountable. You want to move on? You want to move on from this? You hold those people accountable. You bring them to the light and you say, look what they did. And we're going to stop that. And it's never going to happen again. And we're going to stop it right now. These people will never be allowed to dictate what you and your family have to do to stay safe because they lied to you. They misled you. They scared you. And they did it all on purpose for themselves. Selfishly, they did it all on purpose. This was no our hearts were in the right place. Your heart was not in the right place when you shut down businesses and you ended people's lives. The coronavirus may not have killed them, but your mandate certainly did. If we want to move on, people need to be held accountable, but they won't. These people are in power. They're untouchable. Dr. Fauci's going to retire. I think he already did. And he's going to go live off his best days on some big ass house on the beach, counting his money. And everybody's going to forget about it. They're going to forget about the lies that he told, the propaganda that he pushed, the political motivation that he had. They're going to forget. And everyone's going to go on about their life. You want to talk about history? She finishes the stand, and the standard saying is that those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. We will forget this. People will forget the lies that were told to them. And it will happen again. Don't make a mistake. If this was one thing, the government and the world government, the governments of the world learned, is that they can very, very easily manipulate people. The World Health Organization, the United Nations, the United States, its allies, China, all got together and they manipulated the hell out of everybody on this earth. And they did it. And they did it in record time. They had people lost their ever-living minds in the matter of 48 hours. In rather 48 hours of announcing this pandemic, the entire world, not just the United States. I would say that the United States probably wasn't as bad as some other countries, but the entire world lost their ever-living mind. People turned on each other. People turned into psychos. I had family members washing their groceries before they brought them into the house. Do you understand how absurd that is? That's where we were, guys. They were so scared that they were washing groceries before they brought them in. The person, I'm not going to say their name because I love them with my heart, and they've came around. They have since come around and realized, okay, maybe I overreacted. Thank God. But the reality is they were so scared they couldn't leave the house. They were so scared that their anxiety got to the point where it was almost crushing them. It was probably more dangerous that their anxiety was as high as it was than the virus ever was. That's what they did. And they did it within 48 hours. So to say we need amnesty, there is no amnesty for that. We can forgive, but there will be no amnesty for that. And we will not forget. And we will not stay silent until these people are held accountable. And I find it very interesting that the people who made all these horrible decisions want amnesty and forgiveness and just to move on and forget about it. But it's funny because a few months ago or a year ago, they were calling for our heads on a stake. The ones who are the dissenters, the ones who are killing everybody. You were waging a war against us. You were pitting our neighbors against us. You could have gotten us hurt. In many cases, many people did get hurt. And that you just want us to go, oh, all's forgiven. Let's just move on. Everything's fine. You guys, you know what? You meant well. You just meant well. No. You must be held accountable. And as far as I'm concerned, if you meet somebody out in the real world right now and they still wear a mask and they want to talk about how everyone should still be wearing masks or they're still spouting out this nonsense, you should just call them out and say, you know what, you're wrong. Here's why. You're an idiot. You need to take the mask off, throw it away. The CDC has already taken it away. It doesn't work. Stand up for yourself. No more of this just like, well, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. No. Just tell them the truth. You don't even have to be mean about it. Just tell them the truth. Tell them they were lied to. I mean, heck, my brother-in-law got the vaccination. I don't know if he got boosted, but he got the vaccine. He got COVID 2 weeks ago. What a joke. I'm glad he's okay. I had no doubt he would be fine. And on that note, folks, I'm going to wrap it up. We started off great with football and we ended on a negative with this Atlantic article. And I read this article and it's just so frustrating to read because it's the audacity for someone to just pretend like we should just move on and forget about it. That's what they want you to do. They want you to move on. Maybe this is political timing too. We're very close to the midterms. Conveniently, COVID is really no longer a talking point this towards the end of this year. It was starting off strong in 2022, and then it just kind of fizzled off by summer. Nobody's really talking about it anymore. Except Biden likes to tell people that they should get vaccinated. That'll help with inflation. God bless him. If you want to help inflation, you got to get your vaccine, man. You're getting your talking points mixed up, Biden. And I'm sure by the end of the year, Democrats will all but avoid the COVID-19 topic because the presidential election will be next up. And with that said, election is right around the corner, folks. I don't care who you vote for. It's your right. You get to vote. Vote for whoever you want. Pencil your own name in for all I care. But I want you to remember. I want you to remember the people that ripped this country apart, that made those bad decisions. Believe me, their heart was not in the right place. Those folks that made the wrong decision, even if their hearts were in the wrong place, doesn't matter. You drew your line in the sand. You took your stand. You made the call. It was the wrong call. You need to be fired. So before you go back rushing to the polls to vote for your party of choice, instead of voting for your party of choice, why don't you vote for the person who didn't make those poor decisions? Maybe somebody in your area didn't make any of those decisions. They were right the whole time. Great. Then you can do whatever you want. But I would strongly recommend you remember what these folks did and what they put us through for the last 2 years. And I would try to make sure that they don't have the ability to ever do that again. So maybe it's time to vote them out. Republican, Democrat, Independent, doesn't matter. If they made the wrong call, it's time to fire them. It's just that simple. Then we can all move on, I think. And we can begin to heal. And maybe we could start to trust these folks again. But right now, no. I don't think we can. And on that note, folks, it was so good to be back behind the mic. It's good to be ranting on and on and on. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please go rate me on Apple or Spotify. It helps. It takes 2 seconds. Just click the little stars. Give me 5 stars. Tell a friend. Share it on your social media. If you share this podcast on your social media, you have no idea how much that would help me. And I would appreciate it so much. And if you want to comment, drop a line. How do you feel about this article? Tweet at me at TheRealDMKing. You can email me at davidking.therant@gmail.com. Also hit me up on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you guys so much. Have a good evening and go blue.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.